Hey everyone, good morning. It's Paul Smolczyk with Piper's Angels Foundation. I want to welcome everybody back stateside and congratulate everyone on the most amazing event that we have had. Absolutely loved it. The numbers that we've seen with paddlers coming in, absolutely filled with gratitude for what you guys accomplished yesterday. Wonderful day on the water. Conditions were fantastic leaving Bimini. Probably one of the best send-offs that we've had with Ayana breaking out the fireworks. And I just want to thank everyone for your commitment to the event, for your participation in the event, and for your patience the last 12 or so hours as we've kind of worked through. I want to make sure everyone understands that we've always had, since the beginning of the event, a contingency plan in the event that paddlers had to relocate due to weather, which is why we provide all of the paddlers and the captains with the paddler logs to submit. So I want to review today because I know everybody's very interested in what we're going to be doing now and how we're going to be handling this. So a couple messages I wanted to give. One, obviously, I know everybody is super excited about being back. And it is an amazing accomplishment. So I want to congratulate everyone for what you accomplished yesterday and your willingness to stick through this event and paddle across the ocean. This is no easy feat. I think I said it last year. It's, I believe, 0.0000247, I believe, percent of the people in the United States have ever even attempted to do what we did yesterday. So pat yourselves on the back today, regardless of whether you relocated for weather or not. I just want to thank everyone. When you show up on the beach in Bimini and you push off, you have brought 100% of what you had available to you to bring to this event. And the event is only successful because of your participation in it, and you're willing to do that. As we move forward, we're going to be releasing some statements today with regards to the safety and security of the event. Full faith and trust in the staff yesterday. I will tell you from a personal standpoint, I was extremely reluctant to get into the boat. Saw the lightning around us, saw the storm that was coming, and I fully support having had to do that. We were having probably one of the better crossings and paddles that we've ever had. So to walk away from that from a very personal standpoint, I can tell you that from a paddler, I wanted to stay in the water. As a member of the staff and the organization, absolutely the right call to relocate people. And we're going to get into what we're doing now to calculate the adjustments for that. We do have a contingency plan, as I said, that's been in place since the beginning of the crossing in the event that we needed to do that. So what happens now? The first thing, the priority thing is if you are a competitive paddler, whether you are on a relay or an individual, please contact your captains. We need the competitive paddler logs submitted to either myself or Josh Ferris as soon as possible. The actual log itself, they can scan it and email it in. They can take a photograph of it and send it to either myself or Josh. Both of those are acceptable. Those logs must list where you were pulled out of the water and the time, and where you were dropped back into the water and the time. They cannot be approximations. They actually have to be a logged number and a logged time in order to be valid. Those need to come again to myself or to Josh Ferris so that we can actually move forward with doing the calculations on the time and the relocations. What we're gonna do, I'm a visual learner, so I drew a picture of this just to explain to people. This is what we do with that data. And it's a bit of a rudimentary photo, so I hope it's okay with you guys. So if you look at this, down here in the lower right is Bimini. And what we've done, the blue line represents your paddling up until the point of receiving the request to leave the water. Orange represents the travel distance during the relocation, and then obviously blue is paddling distance again. The purple represents the storm, and that does come into play with its positioning with regards to the paddlers, and then obviously Lake Worth Pier is the finish line. So here's what we do now. We will take your average time over the push-off from beach launch up until the point you relocated. So let's say this was 60 miles and it took you 10 hours. You're traveling at 6 miles an hour. We will take that amount that you traveled and the distance from here, the point at which you pulled out of the water, to the pier, and then we will calculate the distance where you put back into the water to the pier. And if you are closer to the pier where you put back in, let's say you relocated 5 miles closer to the pier, we will apply that 6 miles an hour to the 5 miles that you traveled, and we will add that to your overall time, which is your travel distance. It's a pretty simple formula to do. We basically are taking into account any relocation distance that you had. We add in a time factor for that. And then the point at which you are put back into the water until you finish the actual crossing itself, that time is reflected by the AccuChip for when you cross the finish line. So when we add all of these up, your average time or your total time and distance paddled up until relocation, the adjusted time for the relocation period and the distance that you traveled, and then the point at which you got back into the water to the finish line, that is how we will calculate your overall paddle time and paddle distance, and then use the time that you pushed off the beach and the time that you actually crossed. And all of those will come into play for us to determine the actual ranking that people that come in. So it's conceivable that somebody who was ahead of you, and when we add in their relocation time, if you leapfrogged ahead of them when you relocated, that will wash back out and that individual will fall back ahead of you again based upon the fact that they were ahead of you before the relocation. The purple represents the storm. So let's say that your location was actually further south, and relocating to the coordinates that were given by the safety team would have actually had you going through harm's way because of the storm. If your captain had to relocate around the storm a different way and drop into a different location, that is okay. It does not matter whether you put in at the coordinates that were given to you or put in at the coordinates that your captain dropped you at. All of that will fall out with, that's why we need the logs. So all of that will fall out with the distance that you traveled during relocation and the actual location that you went back into the water. So we will keep track of all of that based upon what's submitted. So that's why it's so incredibly important to submit the paddler logs. But again, if your captain had to relocate further around the storm and dropped you in, you will not be penalized for not going back to the logs that were given to you from the safety team. So again, if there are any questions to this, please feel free to reach out to myself and the staff, and we're happy to answer anything. Again, I just want to congratulate everyone for what you've done. We're going to spend the next 48 hours working on these and making sure that everything is dialed in. All paddler logs must be submitted to myself or the crossing staff or Josh by 8 p.m. tomorrow, Tuesday, in order to be included in the event. So again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out, get the paddler logs submitted, and let us do our work on the back end. Thank you again.